Chris Godwin is without a doubt the most well-priced and potentially elite dynasty wide receiver in the league right now, and you should be acquiring him everywhere. And here's why. What is up, everybody? I am, of course, Nate Liss, and welcome back to another episode of The Burst, a series where I use Keep Trade Cuts crowdsourced data to expose value options in the dynasty football landscape. But of course, before we dive in, please do me a favor. If you are a returning subscriber, hit the like button because you already know this is going to be fantastic. And for my new viewers, and even those returning who haven't done it yet, if you enjoy the content that you see today and you want to see more just like it, hit the subscribe button below in the bottom right corner of this video and help me blow this channel up while also helping out yourself and potentially some of your dynasty rosters. And lastly, if you have a player that you think deserves an episode of The Burst done about them, drop their name in the comments below and I will respond with a take of my own and let you know if that player is going to make the cut. With all that said, Chris Godwin, less than just a year ago and prior to the ACL tear last December, was viewed as a top 10 dynasty wideout. And this was a completely justified ranking for a player as young, productive, and heavily utilized as Godwin was. But then recency bias happens and injury narratives start, and the next thing you know, it's like staring into the sun as Dynasty Gamer's eyeballs start melting at the sight of his new price tag. I mean, just look at where he was a few days ago on May 19th. The wide receiver 21? Now, I understand the mentality in redraft. If a player is going to miss some amount of time, then there's a risk because points today are more valuable than points tomorrow in many cases. But this is Dynasty. Chris Godwin is just barely 26 years old, for God's sakes. That means he's younger than Cooper Kupp and Stephon Diggs and Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin and Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. I feel like...
What? Notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
And all of these players are still ranked above him in Dynasty. Why? Because he tore his ACL? Look, I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret because big media doesn't want you to know this, but let me tell you a little bit about ACLs and how players have bounced back. Last year's wide receiver number 1 overall, Cooper Kupp, tore his ACL once upon a time and bounced back the very next season to finish as the wide receiver 7 overall and average 16.9 fantasy points per game. Keenan Allen once upon a time tore his ACL. He too bounced back the very next season and finished as the wide receiver 3 overall while averaging 17.8 fantasy points per game. Hell, even Allen Robinson tore his ACL, and after a team change and yet another subpar quarterback throwing him the ball, he still averaged 11.8 fantasy points per game and looked completely healthy as he ran a 91.2% snap share just a year removed from the injury. That tells us a lot about Allen Robinson and how his recovery went. It tells us a lot about Keenan Allen. It tells us a lot about Cooper Kupp. Not all players die and rot away after an ACL tear. It appears good players stay good. But as stated numerous times around the internet, an ACL tear isn't the big career destroyer that it once was. Hell, I don't hear anybody discounting Jameson Williams because of it. Nobody brings it up when they talk about George Pickens. But here's another unique factor when it comes to the elite talents and ACL tears. It appears that slot-heavy receivers just seem to bounce back quicker. Both Keenan Allen and Cooper Kupp run a 45% or greater snap share out of the slot, an area that Chris Godwin saw a 57.5% top 8 usage in last season. For God's sakes, I mean, even Jordy Nelson at age 31 coming back from an ACL tear posted a top 2 fantasy season while averaging 19 fantasy points per game. But here dynasty players are, to their own detriment, going out of their way to fade the living shit out of Chris Godwin. But aside from the injury discount, which could be 3 to 4 games to start the 2022 season, there's actually another narrative that's brewing. What if Tom Brady retires? Again? Yeah, what if? What if I forget to brush my teeth before bed tonight? What if I get hit by a falling moon rock tomorrow? What if? Since I fancy myself a fancy gambling man, Here would be my bet, knowing almost literally nothing about the inner workings of Tom Brady's mind. Yet why would he retire just to unretire months later, just to come back for a single season? I mean, none of this makes sense on the surface. If he wins a Super Bowl in 2022, you can bet that Tom Brady will come back in 2023 to defend the crown. And if he doesn't win in 2022, you can almost certainly assume that he will be back in 2023, because the last thing that Tom Brady wants is some Michael Jordan to the Wizards moment where he comes back for 2 losing seasons while way past his prime and then is forced to go back home and be a husband again.
Boo box. The boo box. Yeah.
But folks, Chris Godwin has been one of the best receivers in football over the past 3 seasons, and it's like none of you have been paying attention. What people will often cite, though, are his fantasy points per game with Tom Brady, justifiably so, which has been back-to-back top 15 fantasy finishes, and most recently in 2021, a top 7 per game average of 17.3 fantasy points per game. What doesn't come up often, though, in the what if Tom Brady retires or gets hurt or gets hit by that same falling moonrock that was meant for me scenario, is what Chris Godwin did in 2019 during his career best season without Tom Brady. Yep, but drink this one in, folks, because in 2019, Chris Godwin averaged 19.6 fantasy points per game while still fighting for targets with Mike Evans and Jameis Winston at quarterback. And just to add context to how elite that point actually is, those 19.6 fantasy points per game are still a mark that not even Justin Jefferson himself has touched since entering the NFL. But Chris Godwin, a player who ranked number 4 in red zone targets, number 3 in yards after the catch while also ranking number 17 in targets, number 22 in total route wins, which actually included a top 7 finish versus man coverage, and is still tethered to Tom Brady for God knows how long, is somehow valued adjacent to this group of wide receivers. I mean, what does it say about the rest of the players around him on this list that they're actually being ranked next to a guy who tore his ACL but otherwise has been absolutely dominant? I mean, 3 of these players have never caught a pass in their lives yet in the NFL, and I'll go ahead and say this right now on record. If someone in one of my leagues is willing to trade me Chris Godwin straight up for Jameson Williams, a player who is also coming off of his own ACL tear, then I will sprint to my computer full speed to hit the accept button like a Black Friday sale when they slash the price on an already cheap as Vizio TV. Dynasty doesn't have to be hard. Dynasty gamers just like to make it that way. The idea that a multi-time top 10 producer at age 26 who's been comped to Jerry Rice, who still looked elite last year and is still connected to a top 5 passer in the league, has been valued outside the top 20 at his position in recent weeks, and it is a mind that I may never get over. Where's the sun at? Thank you all for tuning in, and if you found any value or entertainment in the content that I just delivered to you, then do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button down below right now so we can continue to blow up this channel and continue to get you some great Dynasty insight. Oh, and one more thing before I go. Guys, link in the description. Come join the Discord chat. We have over 650 members. It's a highly active group. We've got trade channels, rate my roster channels, rumor channels where people are constantly posting hype videos and beat reporter information. It's a great Discord server. You guys can @ me anytime. And if it's spicy enough, I'll definitely get back to you. So guys, be sure to check that out. Once again, thanks for tuning in. See you guys on the next episode.